So thanks everybody for coming to, I'm not sure, lecture 17 or something.
17.
I'm going to start by apologizing in some sense or excusing Gail for not being here. She's had some very traumatic problems happen in her family. In fact, the evening of our last lecture, her mother passed away from cancer. Talking about the products and stuff would have been very hard for her to either do or to watch, and so we're excusing her for it today. In fact, it's been terrible because she lost two cousins to a car accident from a stolen vehicle on the weekend as well. So our thoughts are with her. But today's lecture is on medicinal cannabis products, normally one that she teaches, so in a way going back and forth is good. And she'll teach the final lecture this semester, which will be the history of Hempology 101, something that she hasn't taught before. So having done the history of the Buyers Club last semester, it almost makes sense to have Gail share her stories. And so she'll be teaching the last lecture instead of this one. So I think today I'm going to go a bit all over the road here, and going to run through the slideshow presentation relatively quick. I brought products from our club and a few other cannabis products that some drug companies and others have produced. So I'm going to try to talk about the differences of how and why they're made. But I'll start with saying that we'll talk about the diversity of the cannabis plant, both the various genetics, like there's almost 70 different identified cannabinoids that have a different effect on the mind or body. THC, CBD, and CBN are the most famous of them. They're, in some sense, the most powerful and the most prevalent. But the other cannabinoids all have got different effects that often work synergistically with each other and with the terpenes and flavonoids, essentially the essential oils we refer to them as. But there's not just like one essential oil in a plant. There's a combination, again, of various potential terpenes, and I don't even know how many different terpenes have been discovered, or different flavonoids. And again, the combinations thereof is a whole other scientific field that I don't think's been barely explored at all, except to say we've identified some of them. But each plant has got this very unique spectrum, and not even then each plant, but each part of the plant. Like the cola, for example, the top part, the bud, often has a somewhat different chemical makeup than the smaller, what we call popcorn buds on the side. For whatever reason, the cola can sometimes be so focused on absorbing nutrients and growing big that it seems to suck up, I say more nitrogen, because it can burn sometimes a little bit more harsh than the smaller little popcorn nuggets. But there can be a difference between, like I say, the large nugget and the smaller ones on the side, maybe less THC, but there are more things than THC that are important, to be sure. And then obviously the leaf has got a different chemical makeup than the bud. And so the more leaf that you have in a bud, or red hair, or whatever, again, like, you know, each bud is a little bit different. And each plant contains maybe 6 to 12 of that group of 70 cannabinoids in, you know, different ratios, again, which is why each one is so unique in its medical benefit. And when you add more than one cannabis strain together in a joint or in a food or skin product, you're increasing the number of receptors in your various endocannabinoid systems that are being kind of triggered and benefited by. So you not only, so this is why, and the essential oils as well are really critical. You know, so when you take several different kinds of bud, in fact, it's hard to say how much is the THC and such, and how much are these essential oils. For example, if you mix 3 or 4 different strains together, or more, as I often can do, you end up having a joint that to other people seems much more powerful than any one strain by itself. And that's not because there's more THC in that joint. It's got perhaps less THC than some of the other single strains that you're smoking that seem to have lots of crystal and lots of THC in them. but it's the combination of various trace flavonoids and terpenes that are really having this synergistic effect and making it, again, greater than any individual effect would be. So that means, as far as I'm concerned, that synthesizing any individual cannabinoid and thinking that it would have a comparable benefit to the raw plant is absolutely absurd. It goes completely against every experience that I've had and everything that I've learned using the actual plant, because with many things that occur in nature, there's a combination of chemical reactions that are necessary to induce the maximum benefit, and these different chemicals that have been formed in the cannabis plant over time have been done in such a way as to enhance our body's ability to use them. I firmly believe we have this almost symbiotic relationship with the cannabis plant, which is why it has, on one hand, all these cannabinoids and oils in it that can benefit us, and then on the other hand, the seed is just the best possible food around for us. So, anyway, the idea again of synthesizing chemicals, and I'll get back to this, just does not seem to me to make sense, because you're cutting out the vast. There's no one chemical that you could create in the cannabis plant that would have all of the different benefits. And so the point is, they're often trying to stop the intoxication of, in some sense, although often they're synthesizing THC, and it has a lot of problems when you do that. But that's how they produce drugs. Anyway, so when it comes down to making medicines from the cannabis plant, there's so many ways to do it, that because in some sense the raw plant actually has THC acid in it. It's not THC. The THC needs to be activated through heat, and so there's things that you can do with the actual raw bud. Like if you get a cut, the best thing you can do, honestly, if it's bleeding, is break off a bud and stick it right on there as a Band-Aid. The antibiotic effects of the THC acid and some of the other cannabinoids, but apparently the THC acid is very strong with its antibiotic effects in particular. And so it will help stop the bleeding and keep it from getting infected. Apparently open herpes sores as well.